You're still breathing, aren't you? Then stop acting like your life is special. Dr. Preston Vale didn't even slow down as Earl Jefferson reached for him from the wheelchair, one trembling hand pressed against his burning chest. Earl's left arm hung useless, heavy as stone, his words breaking apart no matter how hard he tried to speak. "Please," he forced out, but Vale only glanced at his scuffed shoes, his worn jacket, the Medicare card clutched in his hand, and saw someone not worth urgency. He turned away, already done with him. People passed, stepping around Earl like he was part of the hallway, not a man coming apart. Earl's breath hitched, vision blurring, fingers slipping lower as the pain spread. And none of them knew. The call he just made didn't go to voicemail. It went to a son who could tear this hospital apart from the inside. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. Earl Jefferson sat in a wheelchair, the hospital corridor bustling around him like he wasn't even there. His hand trembled as it clutched his chest. Each breath felt like fire spreading through his lungs. The fluorescent lights overhead made everything look harsh and unreal. Dr. Preston Vale strode past, white coat flapping, not even glancing in Earl's direction. "Please help me, doctor," Earl called, his voice weaker than he wanted. He stretched out his hand, fingers reaching. "Something is wrong." Dr. Vale stopped, turned, looked down at Earl with eyes that didn't really see him. "You're breathing, aren't you?" The doctor's mouth twitched into what might have been a smile, but there was nothing kind in it. Earl tried to sit up straighter. His left arm felt like it was filled with concrete. "My chest is burning something terrible. My arm feels heavy. And my words—" He paused, frustrated. "They're coming out wrong. Please." Dr. Vale glanced at Earl's worn jacket, the scuffed shoes, the Medicare card clutched in his hand. His eyes swept over Earl like he was scanning an old receipt. "Everyone here is sick, Mr." He glanced at the intake form on the clipboard. "Jefferson. That's why it's called an emergency room." A few staff members nearby chuckled. Tessa Reed, the young intake clerk, stepped closer. "Doctor, his face looks a bit droopy on one side. Should we run stroke protocol?" Dr. Vale shook his head. "Not every old man with indigestion gets a parade. Let him wait, like everyone else." Earl's heart sank. He'd tried to be polite, to wait his turn. That's how he'd lived his whole life. 40 years working maintenance at Lincoln High, fixing things without being asked, helping kids who couldn't afford lunch without making a show of it. Always patient, always respectful. But the pain in his chest was getting worse. Nurse Lena Brooks approached, her eyes kind under gray-streaked hair. She took one look at Earl and frowned. "Dr. Vale, his left face is drooping. BP is elevated. I really think we should—" "Nurse Brooks," Vale cut her off sharply, not bothering to lower his voice. "If I wanted your diagnosis, I'd ask for it. We have actual emergencies to handle." Lena's mouth tightened, but she stepped back. Earl saw the apology in her eyes. "Please," Earl whispered. "Something's not right." A security guard approached, Byron Pike, according to his badge. His face was blank, like someone who'd seen too much to care anymore. "Sir, you need to keep it down," Pike said flatly. "You're disturbing other patients." "I'm sorry," Earl said automatically. Always apologizing, always making room. "I don't mean to cause trouble." Pike nodded and moved on, problem solved. Earl's phone felt heavy in his pocket. His son had made him promise to call if anything happened. Darius would be furious to know he'd waited this long. With trembling fingers, Earl pulled out his phone. The battery was nearly dead, only 8% left. He dialed Darius's number, listening to it ring 4 times before going to voicemail. "This is Special Agent Jefferson. Leave a message." Earl's voice shook as he whispered, "Son? I came in like you told me." He wanted to say more, about the pain, about how scared he was, about how they were looking right through him. But his words weren't forming right. Across the hall, Dr. Vale was laughing with another doctor, their backs turned to the crowded waiting room. Earl watched him walk away, taking his chances of help with him. 1 hour later, the emergency room had grown louder and colder. Earl Jefferson sat hunched in his wheelchair, still waiting in the same hallway spot. The overhead lights buzzed with a harsh glare that made his head pound. People rushed past him, nurses with charts, doctors in white coats, patients with bleeding wounds, but no one seemed to see him. The pain in his chest had spread to his left shoulder. His arm felt like it was filled with sand. "Excuse me," Earl called out to a passing nurse. His voice came out weaker than he intended. "Could someone please check on me?" The nurse glanced at him, then at her clipboard. "Someone will be with you soon, sir." Earl nodded, though soon had been the promise for over an hour now. He pulled his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders. Why was it so cold in here? Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the chill. 2 hours in, the nausea hit. Earl's stomach churned violently. He looked around in panic, finding nothing but the floor to catch what was coming. A wave of vomit rushed up his throat. "Help!" he managed to gasp. An orderly passing by noticed and quickly handed him a plastic bag. Earl clutched it with shaking hands as he emptied his stomach. The sour smell made him gag again. "I'll let someone know," the orderly promised, hurrying away. 10 minutes later, Nurse Lena Brooks appeared, her face tight with concern. "Mr. Jefferson, I'm going to take your vitals again," she said quietly, wrapping a blood pressure cuff around his arm. She frowned at the reading. "Your pressure's climbing. I'm going to see about getting you some labs." Earl tried to thank her, but his tongue felt clumsy in his mouth. The words came out slurred. Lena's eyes widened slightly. She disappeared, returning moments later with Dr. Vale. "His blood pressure is 180/110, she reported. "Slurred speech, left-sided weakness. We really need to—" "Are you still on about this?" Dr. Vale cut her off. "We have actual emergencies, Lena. Stop feeding the panic." "But his symptoms—" "His symptoms are consistent with anxiety," Vale said loudly. "Aren't they, Mr. Jefferson?" "You're working yourself up." Earl tried to explain that no, this wasn't anxiety. This was different. This was wrong. But his words tangled before they reached his lips. "See?" Vale gestured. "He agrees. Give him some water and check back later." 3 hours in, Earl's phone died completely. His last connection to his son gone. He stared at the black screen, fighting back tears of frustration. A man his age shouldn't cry in public. His late wife Gloria would tell him to stay strong, to speak up for himself. But speaking was getting harder by the minute. 4 hours after arrival, an elderly woman in the chair next to him leaned over. Her silver hair was pulled into a neat bun, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You don't look right at all," she said firmly. "I'm Mrs. Bernice Holloway. My granddaughter broke her wrist." She pointed to a teenage girl with her arm cradled against her chest. "But you look worse than she does. Have they checked you at all?" Earl tried to answer, but his words came out jumbled. Mrs. Holloway stood up immediately. "Nurse, this man needs help now." Lena hurried over, glancing nervously toward Dr. Vale's position at the nurse's station. "His speech is all wrong," Mrs. Holloway insisted. "And look at his face. It's drooping." Dr. Vale approached, his expression cold. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but please don't practice medicine from a waiting chair." "I don't need to be a doctor to see someone having a stroke," Mrs. Holloway shot back. "He's not having a stroke," Vale said with exaggerated patience. "He's being monitored." 5 hours in, Lena returned during Vale's break. She quietly wheeled a portable monitor over and attached leads to Earl's chest. "Just for a little while," she whispered. "Let me watch your heart." Earl felt a surge of gratitude. Finally, someone was helping. The relief was short-lived. 20 minutes later, Dr. Vale returned and spotted the monitor. "Who authorized this?" he demanded, loud enough for everyone to hear. Lena straightened her back. "His pulse is irregular, and hallway patients don't get special treatment, Nurse Brooks. You know the protocol." Vale unplugged the monitor himself. "If every patient who thought they were dying got equipment, we'd have nothing left for actual emergencies." The humiliation burned worse than the pain. Earl watched as Lena's face flushed with embarrassment. 6 hours in, the room began to tilt. Colors blurred at the edges of Earl's vision. 7 hours after arrival, desperation drove Earl to try standing. Maybe if they saw him collapse, they would help. His legs buckled immediately, and he dropped to one knee with a gasp. 2 orderlies rushed over, lifting him back into the wheelchair. "Get this man to a bed," Mrs. Holloway demanded from across the room. "He just needs to stay calm," one orderly replied, looking uncertainly toward the nurse's station. Security guard Byron Pike approached, his face stern. "Sir, I've asked you to stop causing scenes. If this continues, I'll have to ask you to leave." "He's sick," Mrs. Holloway protested. "Ma'am, please mind your business," Pike replied flatly. 8 hours had passed. Earl could barely keep his head up. The pain had transformed into something vast and crushing. His left side felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. Lena knelt beside his wheelchair, checking his pulse manually. "I'm going to get you help," she promised quietly. Earl looked at her with fading focus. His mouth worked slowly to form words. "Tell my son," he whispered. "I tried to wait right." Lena's eyes widened in alarm. "Mr. Jefferson." Earl's hand, which had been clutching his chest for hours, suddenly went slack. It fell to his lap as his body slumped forward in the wheelchair. Lena called out, "Code Blue! I need help now!" The hallway erupted into chaos. Nurses ran toward them. Someone pushed a crash cart. Mrs. Holloway stood shouting at Dr. Vale, who had finally turned to see the commotion. Earl heard none of it. The buzzing lights, the cold hallway, the indifferent faces, all faded to black as he slipped away from the world that had refused to see him. Staff rushed through the emergency room in a blur of blue scrubs and white coats. The same hallway where Earl had been ignored for 8 hours now swarmed with urgent activity. The crash cart wheels squeaked against the linoleum as nurses pushed Earl's limp body toward the treatment area. "BP's dropping, 70/40. A young resident called out, her voice tight with urgency. Lena Brooks ran alongside the gurney, her hand gripping Earl's cold fingers. "He's been showing stroke symptoms for hours," she reported, breathless. "Left-sided weakness, slurred speech, confusion, all documented in my notes." Dr. Vale pushed through the double doors just as they wheeled Earl into the resuscitation bay. "What do we have?" he asked, snapping on gloves as if he hadn't walked past this same patient multiple times throughout the day. "Suspected stroke and cardiac event," the resident answered. "Patient's been in the waiting area since—" "Just give me the vitals," Vale interrupted, cutting her off before she could finish the damning timeline. Machines beeped as they connected Earl to proper monitoring for the first time. The cardiac monitor showed an irregular rhythm. A technician rushed in with a portable CT scanner. "Get an airway established," Vale ordered. "Start him on TPA after we confirm it's ischemic. And someone call neurology. Now!" The treatment that should have started hours ago finally began. But the clinical efficiency came too late. "Doctor, he's not maintaining his airway," the respiratory therapist called out. "We need to intubate." Within minutes, Earl Jefferson had a breathing tube down his throat, medicine flowing through his veins, and a team of specialists hovering over him. All the medical attention that had been withheld when it might have made a difference. 3 hours later, Earl lay motionless in the ICU, surrounded by softly beeping machines. The intubation tube jutted from his mouth. Multiple IV bags hung above his bed. A ventilator pushed air into lungs that no longer worked on their own. The neurologist's assessment had been grim. Massive stroke damage, complicated by cardiac distress. The extended period without treatment had allowed swelling to build in Earl's brain, pushing him into a deep coma. Darius Jefferson arrived at a run, still wearing his dark blue suit from a federal interview he'd left mid-question. The FBI badge clipped to his belt caught the fluorescent light as he approached the nurse's station. "Earl Jefferson," he said, his voice controlled despite the panic in his eyes. "I'm his son. A nurse led him to the glass-walled ICU room. Darius stopped cold at the sight of his father. The strong, dignified man who had raised him, now reduced to a collection of tubes and wires. Earl's dark skin had taken on an ashen tone, his face slack and unresponsive. "Dad?" Darius whispered, pressing a hand against the glass. Dr. Vale appeared beside him, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Jefferson, I'm Dr. Vale. I treated your father." Darius turned slowly, his eyes narrowing. "What happened?" "Your father came in with vague symptoms that unfortunately progressed quickly," Vale said, his voice professionally calm. "These events can escalate without warning." "Escalate without warning?" Darius repeated. "My father left me a voicemail 8 hours ago saying he was here." Vale's expression didn't change. "We evaluated him quickly upon arrival, but stroke symptoms can be subtle initially. When he decompensated, we responded immediately." Darius stepped closer. "I want to see the timeline. Every interaction, every assessment, every vital sign." "Of course," Vale nodded. "But right now, you should focus on your father's condition. He's critical, but stable. The next 24 hours are crucial." Darius moved toward the room door, but security guard Byron Pike stepped into his path. "Sir, only one visitor at a time, and you'll need to check in properly at the desk," Byron said, his hand raised to block Darius's progress. Something shifted in Darius's face, a cold fury replacing shock. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out his credentials. "Special Agent Darius Jefferson, FBI," he said, voice low but carrying clearly. "And that's my father who waited 8 hours for help. Step aside." The room froze. Nurses stopped charting. A resident paused mid-sentence on the phone. Byron's hand dropped immediately. "Dr." Vale's confident expression faltered for the first time. "Agent Jefferson, I understand you're upset." "You don't understand anything yet," Darius said, brushing past Byron and entering his father's room. Footsteps clicked sharply down the hallway as Monica Grayson, the hospital administrator, arrived in a tailored suit and perfect composure. She assessed the situation with one sweep of her practiced gaze. "Dr. Vale, I'll take it from here," she said smoothly before turning to Darius. "Agent Jefferson, I'm Monica Grayson, Chief Administrative Officer. On behalf of St. Bartholomew's, I want to express our deepest concern for your father's condition." She gestured toward a family conference room. "Why don't we speak privately? I promise you'll have a full review of your father's care." As she spoke, her eyes darted to the nursing staff. A silent command to stop talking passing between them. One by one, they found reasons to move away from the station. Darius didn't move toward the conference room. Instead, he turned back to Vale, who still stood frozen near the doorway. "You were late," Darius said, his voice carrying the weight of both a son's grief and an investigator's promise. "I'm going to find out why." The fluorescent lights in the family consultation room buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the polished table. Darius sat rigidly in a chair that seemed designed for discomfort. His tie hung loose around his neck, and the day's stubble darkened his jaw. Across from him, Monica Grayson placed a neat folder on the table with manicured fingers, her movements precise and controlled. "Here's your father's complete medical record from today's visit," Monica said, sliding the folder toward him. "I've taken the liberty of highlighting the key points for your convenience." Darius didn't touch it immediately. "Who prepared this summary?" "Our quality assurance team reviews all critical events," Monica replied smoothly. "It's standard procedure." He finally opened the folder and began to read. His expression remained neutral, but his jaw tightened with each page. According to the records, Earl Jefferson had been triaged within 7 minutes of arrival. He had been seen by Dr. Vale within 22 minutes. The notes claimed Earl had refused recommended tests and became agitated when asked to wait. Further entries described him as confused about timeline and eventually combative with staff. The final page included a quote supposedly from Earl himself. "I don't need all those tests. Just give me something for pain." Darius looked up from the papers. My father never refuses medical care. Ever. Dr. Vale stood by the window, arms crossed. Elderly patients often minimize symptoms, Agent Jefferson. It's quite common. Is it also common to ignore stroke symptoms? Darius asked. Your father presented with vague complaints consistent with anxiety or indigestion, Vale said with practiced patience. When clearer symptoms developed, we acted immediately. Darius noticed Nurse Lena Brooks standing near the door, clipboard clutched to her chest. When their eyes met, she quickly looked down. Nurse Brooks, Darius said gently. You were there. Is this what happened? Before she could answer, Monica interjected. Lena, you don't need to stay. We can handle this. Lena's hands trembled slightly. I should check on my other patients, she murmured, hurrying out. Darius turned back to Monica. I want to see the hallway security footage, and the original triage logs, and the nurse's notes, not these summaries. Of course, Monica nodded. Those requests will need to go through proper channels. Our legal department can help you file the necessary paperwork. I'm not filing paperwork, Darius said. I'm asking for transparency about my father's care. The door opened, and a tall black woman in her 50s entered, carrying a leather briefcase. Her tailored suit and stern expression commanded immediate attention. I'm Naomi Bell, representing the Jefferson family, she announced, placing a business card on the table. And I strongly advise you to preserve all records immediately. Monica's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. Ms. Bell, we welcome family advocacy, but I assure you we're being completely transparent. Then you won't mind putting a legal hold on all electronic records, security footage, and staff communications related to Earl Jefferson, Naomi replied, before anything accidentally gets deleted. Monica stood, smoothing her skirt. Agent Jefferson, Ms. Bell, I understand this is an emotional time, but I caution you both. Grief can make people reckless. Reckless accusations can damage reputations, yours included. Darius closed the folder. Is that a threat, Ms. Grayson? It's advice, Monica replied, from someone who's seen many families regret hasty actions. Darius gathered the records and stood. Without another word, he left the room with Naomi following close behind. They paused outside the ICU, where Earl lay motionless, connected to machines that breathed for him. Through the glass, his father looked smaller somehow, diminished against the white sheets. They're already rewriting history, Darius said quietly. Late that night, the ICU waiting area sat empty except for Darius. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting shadows across his tired face. Through the glass, he watched the mechanical rise and fall of his father's chest, controlled by machines that breathed when Earl could not. Darius rubbed his eyes. His phone showed 2:17 a.m., but sleep felt impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his father slumped in that wheelchair, ignored for 8 hours while begging for help. You're Agent Jefferson, aren't you? Darius looked up. An elderly black woman stood before him, clutching a folder that bulged with papers. Her silver hair was pulled into a neat bun, and despite the late hour, she wore a pressed blouse and slacks. Yes, ma'am, he answered, straightening in his seat. I'm Bernice Holloway, she said, lowering herself into the chair beside him. Her movements were stiff, deliberate. I was there today when your daddy collapsed. I tried to tell them something was wrong. Darius nodded. I remember you from the records. You spoke up for him. Wasn't the first time I've done that in this hospital, Mrs. Holloway said. She placed the worn folder on her lap, her weathered hands trembling slightly. My Harold died here 6 months ago. Came in with chest pain, sweating buckets. Dr. Vale said it was anxiety. I'm sorry for your loss, Darius said. Mrs. Holloway opened the folder. Harold was 74. Never anxious a day in his life. Worked construction 40 years without missing a Monday. She handed Darius a hospital document. Look what they wrote about him. Darius scanned the page, his jaw tightening. Patient was combative and non-cooperative during assessment. Harold was unconscious when they wrote that, Mrs. Holloway said, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. They left him sitting there, just like your daddy. She pulled more papers from the folder, photocopies of complaints, letters, handwritten accounts. After Harold passed, I started asking around. Found these other families. All got treated the same way. Darius began sorting through the papers. Names, dates, stories. All different, but eerily similar. Elderly patients left waiting. Poor families ignored. Disabled people accused of exaggerating symptoms. Black patients labeled difficult or non-compliant. This can't be coincidence, Darius muttered. It ain't, Mrs. Holloway confirmed. That Dr. Vale, he picks who matters and who doesn't. And that woman administrator makes the problems disappear. The elevator doors opened, and Naomi Bell strode into the waiting area, carrying coffee cups. She handed one to Darius before noticing Mrs. Holloway. This is Mrs. Holloway, Darius explained. Her husband died here 6 months ago. She's been collecting evidence. Naomi sat down, her expression grave as Darius spread the complaints on the small table. If what these families are saying is true, Naomi said, leafing through the documents, we're looking at potential civil rights violations, falsified medical records, maybe even Medicare fraud. It's true, Mrs. Holloway insisted. Every word. Across the hall, behind partially closed blinds, Monica Grayson and Dr. Vale stood in a small office. Through the gap, Darius could see their tense expressions as they argued in hushed tones. He's FBI, Monica hissed. If he starts digging, he's a grieving son making wild accusations, Vale cut in. No one will believe angry relatives over doctors with 30 years of practice. We need to contain this before the story spreads, Monica insisted. Vale waved her off. These people always quiet down once reality sets in. Darius turned back to the documents, anger building in his chest. He opened another file, Harold Holloway's official chart, and froze. There, in black and white, the same phrase that appeared in Earl's record. Patient refused care. The same words, the same handwriting, the same lie. The next morning, Darius woke with a jolt, his neck stiff from sleeping in the ICU chair beside Earl. The hospital's antiseptic smell had seeped into his wrinkled suit. He checked his watch. 7:18 a.m. He'd been here almost 20 hours straight. Earl lay motionless, the ventilator's rhythmic hiss marking time. The morning sun filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting stripes across his father's ashen face. A nurse Darius hadn't met before checked Earl's vitals, avoiding eye contact. Any changes? Darius asked, voice rough from lack of sleep. No significant changes overnight, she replied mechanically. The doctor will update you during rounds. Darius's phone buzzed. It was Naomi, sending a link to the local news website. His stomach dropped as he clicked it. The headline read, St. Bartholomew Hospital responds to patient incident. Below it was a photo of Monica Grayson, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit, standing at a podium. The statement was already released, barely 12 hours after Earl collapsed. St. Bartholomew Medical Center provided timely and compassionate care to Mr. Jefferson, the statement read. Our medical team responded appropriately to his presenting symptoms. Unfortunately, some medical events progress despite best interventions. Our thoughts are with the family during this difficult time. Darius's hands shook with rage. They hadn't waited a single day before pushing their lies into the public record. They're getting ahead of the story, Naomi texted. Call me. He stepped into the hallway to phone her. They're painting it like Dad's collapse was inevitable, Darius said, pacing the corridor. Like they did everything right. That's why we need to move fast, Naomi replied. But carefully. We need documents, witnesses, and unaltered evidence, not just anger, Darius. I know, he said, forcing himself to breathe. I'm requesting everything. Triage logs, security footage, staffing sheets, medication records, internal communications. Good. I'm drafting preservation notices for all of it, Naomi said. But expect resistance. They'll delay until they can sanitize everything. Darius hung up and returned to Earl's bedside. He used his phone to send formal document requests to the hospital administration. The response came back within minutes, an automated reply stating all requests were under review by appropriate departments. At 2 p.m., Darius stepped out to use the bathroom and buy a sandwich from the hospital cafeteria. A television mounted in the corner caught his attention. It showed live coverage of a charity luncheon happening right there at St. Bartholomew. Darius stopped cold, sandwich forgotten in his hand. There was Dr. Preston Vale, smiling broadly, accepting a Crystal Award for Excellence in Emergency Medicine. The announcer praised Vale's tireless dedication and compassionate approach to crisis care. Wealthy donors applauded. Hospital board members beamed. Darius stared at the screen, unable to move. 8 floors above this celebration, his father lay fighting for his life because of this man's arrogance. Vale stepped to the microphone. I accept this on behalf of our entire emergency team, who work every day to ensure each patient receives the attention they deserve. The sandwich crushed in Darius's grip. A cafeteria worker glanced nervously at him. Darius forced himself to walk away before he lost control. In the elevator back to ICU, he called Naomi again. Vale is receiving an award right now, he said, voice low and dangerous, for emergency excellence. While my father is in a coma because Vale wouldn't look at him for 8 hours. Channel that anger into precision, Naomi advised. We don't just need to be right. We need to be bulletproof. Back in Earl's room, Darius sat heavily in the chair. His phone buzzed with a text from Monica's office. Your requests are being processed. Please note that the hospital's privacy policies require legal review of all record releases. They're stalling, he muttered to Earl's still form. The phone rang, a blocked number. Darius answered quickly. Hello? He heard breathing on the other end. Hesitation. This is Agent Jefferson, he said softly, hoping it was who he thought it might be. The caller hung up. Darius stared at the phone. Lena Brooks? Another witness? He couldn't be sure, but someone was afraid to talk. He leaned forward, taking Earl's limp hand between his own. The machines beeped steadily. The ventilator pushed and pulled, but Earl remained unreachable. Dad, Darius whispered, I saw what they're doing. They're pretending you weren't ignored. They're celebrating themselves while you're lying here. He squeezed his father's hand. I will not let them bury you while you're still alive. Earl's fingers remained still in his son's grasp, but Darius felt his resolve hardening like steel. The hospital's public lies, Vale's award, the blocked call, it all formed a picture of power protecting itself at the expense of truth. Outside the window, the afternoon sun illuminated the hospital's massive donor wall in the courtyard below. Earl's name was there, in small letters, for the $20 he donated monthly after Gloria died. The sight of it made Darius's chest ache with a fresh wave of outrage and determination. That evening, Naomi and Darius met in the hospital parking garage after receiving Monica's official response. The concrete structure felt hollow and cold, their voices echoing slightly between the rows of vehicles. Naomi held up her phone, showing Darius the email. This is complete garbage, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Look at this. Due to a scheduled system maintenance and unexpected technical failure, the requested surveillance footage from the emergency department hallway was automatically overwritten. Darius read the rest silently, his jaw clenching tighter with each line. The hospital regrets this unfortunate timing, he read aloud, voice dripping with disbelief. Unfortunate timing? That's what they're going with? Naomi put her phone away. They knew exactly what they were doing. Standard hospital policy is to keep footage for at least 30 days. There's no way this was accidental. I requested that footage less than 18 hours after my father collapsed, Darius said. Even if there was maintenance, the backup systems should have preserved it. They're counting on most people not understanding the technical details, Naomi replied. But they didn't count on you knowing them. Darius leaned against a concrete pillar, rubbing his forehead. We need someone on the inside who can confirm the system was working. Someone in security or IT. The elevator doors dinged open at the far end of the garage level. Both Darius and Naomi turned, watchful and quiet. A man in navy blue maintenance coveralls stepped out, glancing around nervously before walking toward them. He was in his late 40s, Hispanic, with a hospital ID badge clipped to his pocket that read Rodriguez S. He slowed as he approached, eyes darting between them. "Mr. Jefferson?" he asked quietly. Darius straightened. "Yes?" The man looked over his shoulder once more before speaking. "My name's Sam Rodriguez. I work maintenance here. I heard what happened to your father." "Thank you," Darius said carefully, studying the man's anxious demeanor. Sam took a deep breath. "Look, I don't want trouble, but what they're saying about the cameras isn't true." Naomi stepped forward. "What do you mean?" "I was on the morning shift after your father was brought in," Sam said, voice barely above a whisper. "I had to fix a light fixture right near that camera in the emergency hallway. The camera was working fine, red light on and everything." Darius and Naomi exchanged glances. "Are you certain?" Darius asked. Sam nodded. 100%. And that afternoon, someone from administration came down to security and requested a manual export of the files. Then, the next day, they were gone from the system. "Did you see who it was?" Naomi pressed. Sam shook his head. "Not personally, but Jerry in security mentioned Ms. Grayson's assistant was there with some paperwork about evidence preservation. I thought it was standard procedure, until I heard today they're claiming it was all lost." Darius's expression darkened. "Would you be willing to put that in writing? Make a statement?" Sam's face fell. He shuffled his feet and looked down. "I can't. Not officially. My wife Maria has MS. She's on my insurance plan here. We can't afford to lose it with her treatments." He looked up, genuine regret in his eyes. "If I speak out and lose my job, what happens to her?" Darius wanted to push, but he recognized the impossible choice facing Sam. The hospital's power extended beyond its walls. It controlled this man's ability to care for his sick wife. "I understand," Darius said. "I won't pressure you." Naomi reached into her blazer pocket and produced a business card. "If you change your mind, or if you remember anything else that might help, call me directly. No one has to know we spoke." Sam took the card, quickly tucking it into his pocket. "I should go. I've already been down here too long." He turned to leave, then paused. "Your father, I've seen him before. He always says hello to the maintenance staff. Most people don't even notice us." With that, Sam hurried back to the elevator, disappearing inside as the doors closed. "That's enough to get a court order for backup files," Naomi said, once they were alone again. "Only if we can prove they exist," Darius replied. "Without Sam's testimony, it's just speculation." Inside the hospital, on the ICU floor, Nurse Lena Brooks checked Earl's vitals with trembling hands. She jumped when Dr. Vale appeared in the doorway. "Nurse Brooks," Vale said coolly. "A word?" Lena followed him into the hallway, her shoulders hunched. "I understand Agent Jefferson has been asking questions," Vale said, voice low and threatening, "about timelines and procedures." "I haven't told him anything," Lena whispered. Vale moved closer. "Good. Because loose memories destroy careers. 27 years in nursing. Retirement just around the corner. Would be a shame to end on a note of incompetence and medication errors." Lena's face paled. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm reminding you of reality," Vale replied. "This hospital has supported you for decades. Agent Jefferson will be gone when his father recovers or dies. We'll still be here. Remember where your loyalties should lie." When Lena returned to Earl's room 10 minutes later, she couldn't meet Darius's eyes. She moved mechanically through her checks, her earlier warmth replaced by fear. That night, while researching hospital security protocols on his laptop, Darius discovered a memo buried in the patient safety files Naomi had obtained. It was a routine security access log showing which zones had been reviewed in the past week. His finger froze over the touchpad. There it was. Zone 4 ED Hallway A had been accessed at 10:43 a.m. the morning after Earl collapsed. The user ID belonged to Monica Grayson's department. The timestamp was barely an hour after Darius had first requested to see the footage. The morning sun crept through the blinds at Earl Jefferson's modest home as Darius rubbed his burning eyes. He'd barely slept after discovering the security footage access log. Papers and folders covered the kitchen table. Hospital policies, complaint forms, and medical timelines all arranged in careful stacks. The doorbell rang at 7:30 sharp. Naomi Bell stood on the porch, carrying a leather briefcase and 2 coffee cups. "You look terrible," she said, handing him a cup. "When's the last time you slept?" "Can't remember," Darius answered, stepping aside to let her in. "I found something last night." Security logs show Monica Grayson's office accessed the hallway footage an hour after I requested it. Naomi set her briefcase down. "That gives us grounds for spoliation of evidence claims, but we still need proof of what was on that footage." "I need to grab fresh clothes before heading back to the hospital," Darius said. "Dad's been in the same gown for 3 days. I want to bring him something of his own, even if he's—" He didn't finish the sentence. While Naomi spread out her files on the table, Darius walked down the hallway to Earl's bedroom. Everything was meticulously organized. Shirts hung by color, shoes lined up beneath them. His father's discipline showed in every corner. Darius pulled open the drawer where Earl kept his personal documents. He needed Earl's insurance cards and medication list. Beneath a folder of warranty papers, he found a stack of envelopes bound with a rubber band. He pulled them out, curious, and froze when he saw the St. Bartholomew Hospital logo. The first envelope contained a thank you letter dated 3 years ago. "Dear Mr. Jefferson, thank you for your continued monthly support of St. Bartholomew Medical Center's Patient Dignity Fund." Darius quickly flipped through the others. Month after month, year after year. Donation receipts for $20 each time. The letters were addressed to "Our valued friend." Attached to one receipt was a small handwritten note in Earl's careful script. "In memory of Gloria." They treated her with such kindness. Darius's throat tightened. His mother had died in St. Bartholomew's hospice wing 5 years ago. While her cancer had been terminal, the nurses and doctors had made her comfortable, treated her with respect. Earl had been grateful. So grateful that he'd given $20 every month from his modest pension. $20 that probably meant skipping meals or putting off home repairs. "Naomi," he called, his voice strained. She appeared in the doorway. "What is it?" Darius held up the stack of receipts. "He's been donating to them for years. After Mom died." Naomi took the receipts, examining them quietly. The same hospital that left him begging in a hallway was cashing his checks every month. "They have donor plaques in the lobby," Darius said, the anger building in his chest. "Did they put his name up while they were ignoring him? Did they take his money while they let him suffer?" "This gives us something else," Naomi said. "A relationship." The hospital had a duty of care to all patients, but they also had a special relationship with your father as a donor. They knew who he was, or should have. Back in the kitchen, Naomi laid Bernice Holloway's folder beside Earl's medical records. "Look at these patterns," she said, pointing to highlighted sections. "Harold Holloway. Patient refused diagnostic testing. Your father. Patient declined further evaluation. Same language, different patients." Darius examined both files. The timestamps are suspicious, too. Both files show assessments happening during periods when witnesses say they were still waiting. "And look at this," Naomi said, pulling out another document. "I searched court records last night. Dr. Vale was named in 3 malpractice suits over the past 8 years. All of them disappeared after confidential settlements. The hospital protected him," Darius concluded. "Not just protected. They promoted him," Naomi replied. "After the second lawsuit vanished, he became head of emergency services." She pulled out a stack of hospital performance metrics. This is where it gets even worse. Sane. Bartholomew gets bonuses from insurance companies for quick emergency department throughput times and high patient satisfaction scores. But those metrics only count patients who actually get treated. Darius's eyes narrowed. So, patients who wait without being seen? Don't count against their numbers, Naomi finished. And look who chairs the Department Performance Review Committee. Monica Grayson, Darius said. The same person who handles complaint resolution, Naomi nodded. She's been routing all complaints about Vale through her office instead of the standard peer review process. Darius took careful notes, documenting each connection. Though rage burned inside him, he kept his handwriting steady and his observations precise. One emotional mistake could undermine everything. We need to find others who were there that night, he said. Maybe that woman Bernice mentioned, the one who tried to help Dad. I'll start working on subpoenas for the unaltered records, Naomi said. But without witnesses or the footage, it's still our word against theirs. Darius gathered several of Earl's personal items, his favorite cardigan sweater, slippers, the photo of Gloria he kept by his bed. Then he carefully placed the donation receipts in an evidence envelope. I need to get back to him, Darius said, looking at his watch. The neurologist is coming at 10. As Naomi packed her briefcase, she asked, Are you okay? Darius held up the envelope of donation receipts. My father believed in them. He trusted them with my mother. He gave them what little he had because he thought they cared. He shook his head slowly. That's what hurts the most. They didn't just fail him medically. They betrayed his trust. He tucked the envelope into his jacket pocket, next to his badge, evidence of a broken promise he intended to make them answer for. That night, Lena waits for Darius in the quiet hospital chapel, hands trembling around a sealed envelope. The small room sits empty except for her, illuminated only by the soft glow of electric candles. Her fingers nervously trace the edge of the paper as she checks the door every few seconds. When Darius finally appears, Lena jumps slightly. Her face shows the strain of sleepless nights and constant worry. I can't stay long, she whispers, though they're alone. They watch the cameras in the hallways. Darius sits beside her, careful to keep a respectful distance. Thank you for calling me. I shouldn't be doing this, Lena says, her voice barely audible. But I can't sleep. I keep seeing your father's face. She extends the envelope with shaking hands. These are my notes from that night. The real ones. Darius takes the envelope gently. Your personal notes? I've been a nurse for 37 years, Lena explains. I learned early to keep my own records when something doesn't feel right. It saved patients before. She glances at the door again. I wrote everything down while it was happening. Darius opens the envelope and finds several pages of neat handwriting on hospital notepad paper. The entries are time-stamped, detailed, and devastating. 7:15 p.m. Mr. Jefferson arrives. Left facial droop noted. Speech slurred. Requesting chest pain evaluation. Triage vitals. BP 178/95. Pulse 92. 7:40 p.m. Informed doctor. Veil of stroke symptoms. Suggested stroke protocol. Denied. Patient still in hallway. 8:22 p.m. Mr. Jefferson vomited. Facial droop worsening. Left arm weakness noted. Requested bed assignment. Denied by Dr. V. 9:45 p.m. Patient requested help standing. Nearly fell. Speech significantly worse. The notes continue hour by hour, documenting Earl's deterioration and Vale's repeated refusals to help. You documented everything, Darius says, looking up at Lena. She nods. When they finally took him back, after he collapsed, Monica Grayson arrived within minutes. She told everyone not to write anything in the official chart until legal reviewed the timeline. Lena's voice cracks. They made us wait while your father was dying. Why didn't you say something earlier? Darius asks, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. Lena's eyes fill with tears. I'm 61. I have a sister with MS who depends on my insurance. If I lose this job... She stops herself. But that's no excuse. I should have spoken up right away. Fear is exactly how they control people, Darius says. It's not just you. It's a system designed to keep everyone quiet. I tried to help him, Lena insists. I put him on the portable monitor when Dr. Vale wasn't looking. I kept checking his vitals when I could slip away. But I should have done more. Darius carefully returns the notes to the envelope. These will help make sure this doesn't happen to someone else. What will they do to me? Lena asks. Naomi, my attorney, will file an emergency motion for protection, Darius explains. These notes are legally protected as whistleblower evidence. They'll know it was me anyway, Lena says. Yes, Darius admits. But we'll be ready. Lena straightens her back, seeming to find resolve. Your father was so polite, even when he was suffering. He kept apologizing for bothering us. No one who behaves that way should be treated the way he was. Thank you, Darius says simply. This changes everything. He means it. For the first time since finding his father unconscious, Darius feels the case turning. Lena's contemporaneous notes provide the timeline they need, evidence that can't be explained away as grief or confusion. As Darius leaves the chapel, he calls Naomi immediately. We have documentation. Nurse's notes from that night, time-stamped, with vital signs and specific refusals of care. Is she willing to testify? Naomi asks. Yes, Darius confirms. But we need to move fast. Once the hospital realizes she's talking to us, I'll file for whistleblower protection first thing in the morning, Naomi promises. And I'll add this to our emergency motion for preservation of evidence. Across the hospital, in her corner office overlooking the city, Monica Grayson receives a text message from hospital security. The chapel cameras show Nurse Brooks meeting with Darius Jefferson. Monica's face hardens as she picks up the phone. I need Nurse Brooks's access records for the past 3 months. Medication administration, narcotics logs, everything. She pauses. Also, I want her login history for the electronic health record system. Dr. Vale enters her office without knocking. We have a problem. The maintenance guy, Rodriguez, has been avoiding me. Monica holds up her hand to silence him. One fire at a time. Nurse Brooks just met with Jefferson in the chapel. She wouldn't, Vale begins. She did, Monica cuts him off. We make her unreliable. Now. She hangs up the phone and turns to Vale. If Brooks documented anything that night, we need to make sure no one believes her. Vale nods slowly, understanding exactly what Monica means. Lena walks back to her shift, unaware her badge login has already been targeted. She feels lighter than she has in days, believing she's finally done the right thing. The weight of her secret. The courthouse loomed against the morning sky, its stone steps already crowded with reporters. Darius helped Lena from the car, noticing how her hands trembled. She hadn't slept. The dark circles under her eyes told that story clearly enough. Are you sure you want to do this? He asked quietly. I don't want to, Lena replied, gripping her nurse's bag where she kept her notes. But I need to. Bernice Holloway joined them at the base of the steps, dressed in a pressed blue suit that looked decades old but carefully maintained. They did this to my Harold, she said. They won't do it to another family without a fight. Naomi met them at the courthouse entrance, her expression serious. The hospital legal team just filed a stack of exhibits. They've been busy. Inside the courtroom, Monica Grayson sat beside Dr. Vale and 3 hospital attorneys. Their table was organized with color-coded binders and tablets. Vale caught Darius's eye and smiled slightly. Judge Harriet Moore called the hearing to order. This is a preliminary hearing on the petition for emergency preservation of evidence in Jefferson v. St. Bartholomew Medical Center. Ms. Bell, you may begin. Naomi rose confidently. Your Honor, we have evidence of deliberate negligence resulting in catastrophic injury to Earl Jefferson, followed by systematic alteration of medical records to cover up that negligence. She presented Lena's handwritten notes, explaining how they documented Earl's deterioration, hour by hour, and Vale's repeated refusals to provide care. Nurse Brooks risked her career to preserve the truth, Naomi said. These contemporaneous notes directly contradict the hospital's official records. When Lena took the stand, her voice was soft but steady as she described Earl's symptoms and how Vale dismissed them. His face was drooping on the left side. He vomited. His speech was slurred. These are classic stroke symptoms that require immediate intervention. The hospital's lead attorney, Richard Donovan, approached for cross-examination. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Nurse Brooks, are you currently under investigation for medication discrepancies at St. Bartholomew?" Lena's face went pale. "What? No, I don't." Donovan presented a document to the judge. "Your Honor, this report shows multiple instances where Nurse Brooks accessed controlled substances without proper documentation over the past 3 months." "That's not true," Lena gasped. "Furthermore," Donovan continued, as if she hadn't spoken, "we have evidence that Nurse Brooks was reprimanded twice for improper charting in the 6 months before Mr. Jefferson's visit." Naomi objected, but the damage was done. Lena looked devastated, her credibility under attack. When the hospital presented their case, they displayed polished digital logs showing Dr. Vale had supposedly checked on Earl 4 times during his wait. Their expert witness, a distinguished-looking neurologist from a prestigious university, testified that Earl's stroke symptoms developed suddenly and catastrophically, impossible to predict from his initial presentation. "In medicine, we call these watershed events," the expert explained smoothly. "They appear without warning. Even with immediate intervention, Mr. Jefferson's outcome would likely have been the same." During the lunch recess, Lena received a text message from the hospital's HR department. She showed it to Darius with shaking hands. "They've suspended me," she whispered. "Pending investigation of medication discrepancies." Bernice put an arm around Lena's shoulders. "They did the same thing to the nurse who tried to help Harold. Made her look like a thief." When court resumed, the hospital's case only strengthened. They presented security logs showing Earl moving around the waiting room normally in the early hours, logs Darius knew couldn't be accurate. Judge Moore frowned as she reviewed both sides' evidence. "While Mr. Jefferson's condition is tragic, I cannot issue emergency sanctions based on disputed evidence. Ms. Bell, if your client wishes to pursue claims, you'll need to do so through standard discovery processes." Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed around Darius. "Agent Jefferson, did you threaten hospital staff with a federal investigation? Is it true you used your FBI credentials to access restricted areas of the hospital? Are you using your federal position to pursue a personal vendetta?" Before Darius could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed his supervisor's name. "Darius, I have just received a complaint from St. Bartholomew's legal department," his supervisor said, without preamble. "They're alleging you used your official position to intimidate medical staff and access restricted records." "Sir, that's not what happened. I need you to step away from anything touching this hospital until ethics reviews the allegation. That's an order, not a request." Darius ended the call, feeling the walls closing in. As the group headed toward the elevators, Dr. Vale stepped into their path, his face a mask of professional concern for the reporters still hovering nearby. When the journalists moved out of earshot, Vale's expression changed to one of barely concealed triumph. "You wanted a villain, Agent Jefferson," he said quietly. "All you found was your father's bad luck." Darius's hand clenched into a fist at his side. Vale noticed and leaned closer. "Some men spend their whole lives being invisible. Your father just happened to do it in my emergency room." Darius's arm tensed, every muscle ready to swing. The satisfaction it would bring, momentary as it might be, almost seemed worth the consequences. Instead, he unclenched his fist with deliberate effort. "This isn't over," Darius said, his voice low and controlled. Vale smirked. "I believe it is." As Darius walked away, his body shaking with suppressed rage, he could hear Monica's voice behind him, congratulating her legal team on their thorough preparation. Their celebration echoed down the marble hall. Darius unlocked the front door to his father's modest brick house. the one Earl had owned for 42 years. The place where Darius had grown up learning to ride a bike, do homework at the kitchen table, and become the man he was today. He stepped inside, breathing in the familiar scent of lemon polish and old books. Tonight, he couldn't face the sterile hospital room, the beeping machines, or the pitying glances from nurses who'd heard about the court disaster. He needed to think without interruption, away from the hospital's suffocating walls. Darius dropped his keys on the small wooden table by the door, the same table where Earl always emptied his pockets at day's end. His father's wallet still sat there, along with his reading glasses and house keys. Next to them lay Earl's ancient flip phone, the battery nearly dead. Darius picked it up, turning it over in his hands. Earl had resisted smartphones for years, claiming his simple phone did simple things for a simple man. Darius plugged the charger into the wall and connected the phone, watching the battery icon blink weakly to life. He sat heavily in Earl's recliner and opened the voicemail again, putting the phone on speaker. He just needed to hear his father's voice, something real and true amid all the hospital's lies. "Son, don't be mad. I came in, like you told me." Earl's voice sounded frightened and breathless. Darius closed his eyes, feeling the familiar sting of tears. But then, as the message continued, something in the background caught his attention. A voice, muffled but recognizable. "Not every old man with indigestion gets a parade." Darius sat up straight. Vale's voice, clear enough to identify. He rewound and played it again, turning up the volume to maximum. "Not every old man with indigestion gets a parade." Darius's heart raced. He'd been so focused on his father's words that he'd missed Vale's dismissive comment in the background. But how had Earl's phone captured it? The voicemail wasn't long enough to cover 8 hours of waiting. He examined the phone more carefully, scrolling through its limited menus. There, under Media, he found something. A voice recording. Earl had accidentally started a voice memo while trying to call Darius. When Darius tried to play it, an error message appeared. The file was corrupted, likely from when the battery died. But it existed. Darius checked his watch. 10:47 p.m. Too late for most people, but not for Alina Price. He'd worked with her on 3 evidence-tampering cases in the past 2 years. If anyone could salvage the recording, she could. He dialed her number. "Price," she answered, sounding wide awake. "Alina, it's Darius Jefferson. I need your help. Personal, not bureau. I heard about your father. I'm sorry. I think his phone might have recorded what happened in that hallway. The file's corrupted." There was a pause. "Bring it over. I'm still up." 40 minutes later, Darius sat in Alina's home office, watching her connect Earl's phone to specialized equipment. Her fingers flew over the keyboard with practiced precision. "The battery died mid-recording," she explained, eyes fixed on the monitor. "But the data wasn't overwritten. I'm bypassing the phone's playback system and extracting the raw file." Lines of code scrolled across her screen. Darius leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. "Got something," Alina said after 20 minutes. "It's fragmented, but there's audio. Let me clean it up." She worked for another hour, filtering background noise and enhancing voices. Finally, she pressed play. Earl's voice came through first, weak but clear. "Please, help me. Something's wrong with my arm." Then Vale. "Sir, you've been evaluated. Take a seat." Earl again. "Can't feel my fingers right." A woman's voice, Lena. "Doctor, his face is drooping on the left. We should run the stroke protocol." Vale, irritated. "He's not presenting with clear stroke indicators. This is probably anxiety." Lena. "But his speech is slurred and—" Vale, cutting her off. "Not every old man with indigestion gets a parade. Back to your station, please." The recording jumped forward, a gap where data was lost. Byron's voice emerged. "Sir, I've had complaints about you calling out. You need to quiet down or I'll have to ask you to wait outside." Earl. "Can't. Breathe right." Another jump forward. A new voice, Monica Grayson. What's the situation here? Vale. Just another Friday night. Too many patients. Not enough beds. Monica. Is that the man Agent Jefferson called about? Vale. His father. Yes. Monica. No one writes anything until legal reviews the timeline. Understand? The recording ended there. Darius sat back, stunned. His hands shook as Alina saved the enhanced audio to a flash drive. This is evidence of coordination, Alina said quietly. They knew who your father was connected to and immediately started covering tracks. Can you authenticate this for court? Darius asked. I can provide a complete forensic analysis showing it hasn't been tampered with, yes. The timestamps, voice patterns, background noise consistency, it's all verifiable. Darius stared at the flash drive Alina handed him. Such a small thing to carry such damning evidence. He drove straight to Naomi's house, calling from the car. Despite the late hour, she answered immediately and met him at the door in sweatpants and a Howard University t-shirt. This better be worth waking me at 2 a.m., she said, but her expression was concerned rather than annoyed. They sat at her kitchen table as the recording played. Naomi listened intently, taking notes on a legal pad. When it finished, she replayed certain sections, writing down exact quotes. Finally, she removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Her eyes, when she looked at Darius, were fierce with renewed determination. This is not negligence anymore, she said, her voice steady and cold. This is obstruction. The morning light streamed through the blinds of Naomi's office as she and Darius huddled over her desk. A forensic audio specialist she trusted had arrived at 6 a.m. to officially authenticate the recording from Earl's phone. The file integrity is solid, the specialist confirmed, sliding a technical report across the desk. No signs of manipulation or editing beyond corruption from the phone's battery failure. These are genuine voice prints. Darius nodded, his eyes red from lack of sleep. What about admissibility? It meets federal standards, Naomi replied, organizing a stack of documents. Recording in a public space where there's no expectation of privacy, especially when the recording was accidental rather than deliberate. A soft knock interrupted them. Naomi's assistant poked her head in. There's a Sam Rodriguez here? Says it's urgent about St. Bartholomew's? Darius straightened immediately. Send him in. Sam entered looking like he hadn't slept in days. His maintenance uniform was rumpled, his eyes darting nervously around the room. I wasn't sure I should come, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But after what they did to Nurse Brooks, I can't be part of this anymore. Part of what, Mr. Rodriguez? Naomi asked gently. Sam pulled a small USB drive from his pocket. His hand trembled slightly as he placed it on the desk. I've worked maintenance at St. Bartholomew's for 11 years. Cameras, electrical, security systems. That's my department. He swallowed hard. When they told me the hallway footage was gone due to technical failure, I knew it was a lie. I'm the one who maintains those systems. Darius leaned forward. You saved a copy. Sam nodded. I've seen this happen before. 3 times in the past 2 years, they've had me erase footage after incidents. Always the same. Ms. Grayson calls it a data cleanup for patient privacy. His voice hardened. But this time I made a backup first. Naomi inserted the drive into her computer. The video showed the emergency department hallway from multiple angles. She quickly found the timestamp matching Earl's arrival. They watched in silence as the footage played. Earl sat slumped in the wheelchair, repeatedly trying to get staff attention. Lena approached him several times, taking vital signs, her face increasingly worried. Dr. Vale walked past repeatedly, barely glancing at Earl. In one damning sequence, Vale physically waved Lena away when she tried to show him something on a notepad. There, Sam pointed. That's when Ms. Grayson arrived. See how she pulls Dr. Vale aside? Right after that, they started changing records. The footage continued until Earl's collapse, his body suddenly going limp, the delayed scramble of staff, the panic that followed. This changes everything, Naomi said, her voice tight with controlled anger. She immediately began making calls, first to state medical board investigators, then to federal civil rights officials she knew from previous cases. "We need to move fast," she told Darius while waiting on hold. "The hospital board meeting is at 3 today. Monica is scheduled to give her official response to the unfortunate incident with your father." Darius nodded grimly. "She doesn't know we have this." "Exactly. You can't lead this officially, not while your FBI status is under ethics review, but as Earl's son, you can provide victim family evidence through proper channels." While Naomi continued her calls, Darius reviewed the video again, his jaw clenched tight. He paused on a frame showing Earl reaching out toward a passing Dr. Vale, who looked directly at him before turning away. "I need one more call," Naomi said, dialing a number from memory. "Lydia Chen at the Tribune. She broke the elder abuse story at Westlake Nursing Home last year. We need media presence." Sam watched anxiously. "Will this be enough? The hospital has expensive lawyers." "Lawyers can't argue with what everyone can see with their own eyes," Naomi replied, her voice determined. "We're not just filing motions now. We're bringing this into the light, live and public, at their own board meeting." Darius continued watching the footage, his finger hovering over the screen where his father sat, ignored and afraid. 8 hours of suffering, condensed into minutes of undeniable evidence. "Now they all see you," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Now everyone will see exactly what happened to you, Dad." That afternoon, the St. Bartholomew Medical Center boardroom transformed from its usual quiet elegance into something more like a courtroom. The long mahogany table at the front, normally reserved for board members and executives, was flanked by rows of chairs quickly added to accommodate the unexpected crowd. Hospital donors in expensive suits sat stiffly near the front, their usual confident smiles replaced by concerned frowns. Local reporters clutched notebooks and phones, sensing a bigger story than the procedural update they'd been promised. Staff members stood along the walls, some curious, others visibly uncomfortable. In the third row sat Bernice Holloway, her hands tightly gripping her purse, surrounded by other families who had lost loved ones or watched them suffer at St. Bartholomew's. Their presence alone created tension in the room, faces the hospital preferred to forget now sitting in plain view. Lena Brooks entered quietly, taking a seat near the back. She looked smaller somehow, the weight of her suspension visible in her hunched shoulders. Sam Rodriguez slipped in moments later, nodding briefly to Darius before finding a corner spot near the exit. Naomi Bell arranged documents at a small side table with the calm precision of someone who had faced powerful institutions before. Darius Jefferson sat in the back row, his FBI training evident in his perfectly still posture and watchful eyes. Monica Grayson took the podium with practiced grace, her navy suit immaculate, her smile warm but controlled. Dr. Vale sat beside the empty board chairs, legs crossed, occasionally checking his watch. "Thank you all for coming," Monica began, her voice carrying perfectly without seeming loud. "St. Bartholomew has proudly served this community for 87 years. In that time, we have treated hundreds of thousands of patients with care and dignity." She paused, allowing her words to settle. "Recently, our emergency department has been unfairly attacked following the unfortunate case of Mr. Earl Jefferson." Her expression shifted to practiced sympathy. "While we cannot discuss specific patient details due to privacy laws, I want to assure everyone that our internal review found our staff acted appropriately given the presenting symptoms." Several board members nodded supportively. Vale smiled slightly. "Medicine is not perfect. Outcomes are not always what we hope for. But St. Bartholomew remains committed to excellence in—" "Excuse me," Naomi stood. "I apologize for interrupting, but I represent the Jefferson family, and we have newly authenticated evidence directly relevant to your statements." Monica's smile tightened. "This is a board meeting, not a courtroom. If you have materials to submit, our legal department would be happy to—" I believe the board would benefit from seeing this evidence immediately, Naomi countered, especially since public statements are being made about Mr. Jefferson's case. The board chairman, an older man named William Prescott, leaned forward. What kind of evidence? Monica stepped between them. Dr. Prescott, this is highly irregular and potentially violates multiple. Let's see it, said a woman board member, glancing meaningfully at the reporters. If there's evidence, we should know what it is. Monica's objection died as she recognized the political reality of refusing transparency with media present. Naomi nodded to Sam, who connected a laptop to the room's projection system. This evidence was recovered from Mr. Jefferson's phone and confirmed by security footage. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. Earl's weak voice filled the space. Please help me, doctor. Something's wrong. Then Vale's dismissive response. Not every old man with indigestion gets a parade. Gasps rippled through the audience. A donor near the front visibly recoiled. Monica stood quickly. This recording is clearly manipulated and taken out of context. We have no way to authenticate. I can authenticate it, Sam said, standing from his corner spot. I'm Sam Rodriguez from Hospital Maintenance. I preserved the security footage showing exactly what happened that night. The room fell silent as the screen filled with time-stamped video. The 8-hour ordeal played out in compressed time. Earl's deterioration visible even to untrained eyes. Vale's repeated passes without stopping. Lena's frustrated attempts to intervene being waved off. Bernice began sobbing quietly, her hand covering her mouth. Other families leaned forward, recognizing the same pattern that had harmed their loved ones. That's exactly how they treated my mother, someone whispered loudly. As the video showed Earl finally collapsing, Vale stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're all being manipulated by edited footage and emotional appeals. His voice rose sharply. These people are trying to trick you? From the back row, Darius Jefferson rose slowly to his full height, his expression calm, but his eyes fixed on Vale. Dr. Vale's face flushed crimson as the video ended. The boardroom lights came back up, revealing shocked expressions all around. This is nothing but manipulation, Vale shouted, slamming his palm against the table. You're twisting medicine into politics. That man came in during our busiest night with vague symptoms. Monica tried to regain control, her professional smile cracking. Let's all take a moment to... No, I won't be silenced by this witch hunt, Vale continued, pointing at Lena. She's a disgruntled employee with medication discrepancies. He's a maintenance worker who stole private footage. He jabbed toward Sam. And she's an attorney looking for a payday, he said, glaring at Naomi. His finger finally landed on Darius. And he's abusing his federal badge because he can't accept that medicine isn't perfect. Reporters scribbled furiously. Phone cameras recorded everything. The room fell silent as Darius walked slowly from the back, stopping 10 feet from Vale. His voice came quiet but clear, carrying to every corner of the room. My father worked 40 years in public schools, fixed broken heaters before children complained, quietly paid for lunches when kids couldn't afford them. Darius paused, his control absolute. He donated $20 monthly to this hospital because he believed in your mission. Darius took one step closer. He came here with textbook symptoms of a stroke. You saw an elderly black man you thought no one important would miss. That was your mistake. Vale's professional mask shattered completely. People like him flood emergency rooms every day. The words hung in the air. A death sentence to his own career. Doctor. Prescott stood immediately. Security, please escort Dr. Vale from this room. 2 security officers moved toward Vale, whose face showed dawning horror at what he'd just said on camera. The State Medical Board is initiating emergency suspension proceedings, announced a woman who stood from the audience, showing credentials. Dr. Vale's privileges are suspended pending full investigation. Before Vale could respond, the doors opened again. 3 people in suits entered, displaying federal credentials. We have subpoenas for patient records, electronic devices, and internal communications related to Earl Jefferson's care and subsequent documentation, the lead agent announced. Nobody leaves with phones or laptops until these are served. Monica's face went ash white. This is completely unnecessary. Ms. Grayson, Dr. Prescott interrupted. The board is placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately. Please surrender your credentials to security. The room erupted in whispers and movement. A major donor stood and walked out, followed by two others. Reporters pressed forward, shouting questions. Board members huddled together, faces grim. Nurse Brooks, Dr. Prescott continued, your suspension is lifted pending full review. Mr. Rodriguez, Hospital Council will arrange whistleblower protection for you immediately. Lena's eyes filled with tears. Sam nodded silently, looking both relieved and terrified. Through it all, Vale stood frozen, watching his career collapse in real time. Security finally took his arm, guiding him toward the door as cameras followed. You can't do this, Vale protested weakly. I built this department. And now you've destroyed it, Monica whispered, too quietly for anyone but Vale to hear. Darius watched it unfold without emotion. The victory felt hollow with his father still unconscious. He caught Naomi's eye and nodded once, then slipped out while federal agents began collecting devices. He walked quickly through familiar hallways, past whispering staff who already knew something major had happened. He ignored the texts buzzing in his pocket, the calls he'd have to return to his supervisor. Those things could wait. He pushed through the ICU doors, nodded to the nurse who'd been caring for Earl, and took his usual seat beside the bed. The machines beeped steadily. Earl's chest rose and fell with mechanical assistance. It's done, Dad, Darius said quietly, taking his father's hand. But I need you to wake up now. That's the only part that matters. That evening, Darius returned to Earl's ICU room after the boardroom reckoning, exhausted and quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as he settled into the familiar chair beside his father's bed. His body ached from tension, the day's victory hollow while Earl remained still and unresponsive. He leaned forward, taking Earl's hand between his own. The machines continued their steady rhythm, breathing for the man who had always been his rock. Dad, Darius said softly, I need to tell you what happened today. He began slowly, his voice low and intimate in the quiet room. We got them, Dad. All of them. That recording you accidentally made on your phone? It caught everything. Dr. Vale saying those awful things. The nurses trying to help you. Everything. Darius rubbed his thumb across his father's knuckles. Sam, the maintenance guy. He kept a backup of the security video. Showed you sitting there for 8 hours while Vale walked right past you. And Lena, she stood up for you too. Brought her notes. They tried to ruin her, but she didn't back down. A nurse peeked in, then quietly withdrew, giving them privacy. We showed it all at the board meeting today. Vale lost it completely. Said people like you flood emergency rooms every day. Right in front of everyone. Reporters, board members, everybody. They took his badge right there. Medical board suspended him on the spot. Darius swallowed hard, his voice catching. Monica's gone too. Administrative leave. Federal agents showed up with subpoenas. The whole thing crashed down on them at once. He squeezed Earl's hand gently. You were never invisible, Dad. Not to me. Not to anyone who matters. They just wanted you to feel that way. Darius fell silent, watching his father's face. The minutes ticked by. He closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed by the week's events. Then he felt it, the slightest pressure against his palm. Darius's eyes snapped open. Dad? Earl's fingers twitched again. Then, slowly, his eyelids fluttered. Dad! Nurse! Darius called out, standing now, still holding his father's hand. He's waking up. Earl's eyes opened, unfocused at first, then gradually finding his son's face. Recognition dawned in them, and a tear slid down his weathered cheek. The weeks that followed unfolded with painful slowness but steady progress. After 3 days, Earl was strong enough to breathe on his own. The ventilator finally removed. His speech was slurred, but improving daily. Physical therapists visited twice daily, working with him to regain strength in his weakened limbs. Darius took leave from work, spending days at the hospital, and nights gathering evidence for the cases now moving forward. Earl graduated from ICU to a regular room, then to an inpatient rehabilitation facility. He learned to walk again, first with a walker, then with a cane that became his constant companion. 4 months after that terrible day in the emergency room, St. Bartholomew Hospital reached a settlement with the Jefferson family and 16 other victims identified through Bernice's records and subsequent investigation. Dr. Vale faced a medical board hearing where his license was permanently revoked. Monica Grayson was indicted on multiple counts of obstruction and healthcare fraud related to falsified records and billing manipulation. Lena Brooks returned to nursing with back pay and a formal apology, now heading a new nursing ethics committee. Sam Rodriguez received whistleblower protection and continued his work without fear. The settlement mandated the creation of the Earl and Gloria Jefferson Patient Advocacy Office, dedicated to ensuring fair treatment for all patients, with particular attention to elderly and minority populations. At the dedication ceremony 6 months after Earl's collapse, he stood at the podium, leaning on his cane. His voice was slower than before, but filled with unmistakable dignity. "I asked for help," Earl said, each word carefully formed. "They showed me how little they thought my life was worth. My son, these good people, and all of you reminded them that a man's worth does not shrink because he gets old or because his skin is black." Darius steadied Earl beside the new plaque as the crowd rose in applause, and Earl finally smiled. The smile of a man who had been seen. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.